This one it is called No Limit. And the expression was used recently in relationship with a beautiful friendship, which is not the beginning of a beautiful friendship. It started, there is a historical. I don't know if it was beautiful, but definitely it was a connection and a friendship at the beginning of China during the Civil War, when the communists were fighting the nationalists, and then they fought the Japanese. There was a relationship between Russia and China, undeniable relationship between the communists from Russia and the communists from China. Then, during the history, the big powers split their vision of communism, world communism, as two heads like Mao and Stalin, of course, with that kind of ego and that kind of history and that kind of countries, obviously they did not agree 100% about a lot of things. And a good thing is that Romania in that time was able to keep good relationship with both of these countries and even to mediate between those countries at a certain time. It is history. In the diplomatic meetings that they have at the highest level, Mr. President Xi Jinping and Mr. President Putin, they sign a lot of agreement, obviously trying to offset the possible sanctions that the West might impose on Russia if Russia will invade Ukraine. The question is, what is China doing about that? What is China thinking about the entire situation with Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, the rest of Europe, and the standoff with the Western world and NATO alliance? Well, I looked into it. Apparently, China obviously has his own interest, its own interest. Yet, apparently, they declare they love each other. Those leaders, they declare no limits between their relationship. And China, in case of the sanction, was ready to lend a helping hand to Russia to offset, to counterbalance the possible hardship of economical sanctions. I am a little bit confused, the monkey on a pile of stone is confused. I'm the monkey. No limits, metaphorically speaking. Obviously, there are no limits. I like when there are no limits. In Canada, when I was hearing the sky is the limit and this and that, I said, okay, this is bullshit. They already talk about anything. So, no limits to their friendship. Okay, I'm looking in the real in the real life situation. Ukraine is in a type of war with Russia for 8 years now, 14,000 deaths. That is acceptable for China? Yes, it's acceptable, Leo, because China is big. We have 1.4 billion people, and we deal with big numbers. Big numbers, I mean. 100, 140, that's, we start talking with millions. You don't buy 100,000 pens. We talk about 10 million, 5 million, because China is big and it's a huge market that everybody wants to be in. Yes, but not at any price and with the abdication of some decency and principles. No limits, no limits. What does it mean, no limits? This means carte blanche for Mr. President Vladimir Putin to go and do whatever he wants in Ukraine, in Belarus, in the Baltic states, in at the Black Sea. This is no limits. What does it mean, no limits? I understand they love each other. They have a long history of relationship, and they line up against the West. I mean, their idea is fuck the West, fuck the West, fuck the West. Let's create problem, fuck the West. Because they are in an ideological struggle, right? In a competition. It's very complex, Leo. They said China is a foe, an enemy, a competitor, and a partner. And a huge culture and civilization. Huge. However, I'm confused. No limits. I think there should be some limits. I don't think even the universe probably has some limits. Now they are going to find the limits, the beginning of the universe. Is still expanding, but I'm looking in the history and I remember the moment when the United States of America invaded Iraq. Many people in a free society like relatively free like the United States of America protested in the streets against the war in Iraq. Almost 50% of the society, which is good for them, at least. Yet there was not a lot of democracy there. There was not a referendum. A bunch of people, very small number, comparing with the size of the population of America, we the people, for the people. It wasn't for the people, it was for some part of the people. They decided to go in because, to finish the job. It's going to be easy. Slam dunk. And the consequences of this no limit kind of policy, we don't care about other people, we don't care about the United Nations, we have our plan, we go in, we march to Baghdad, we put there a puppet government, we get the price, the oil, we change the Middle East in our shape and so-called values that I cannot fucking see those values. And it's gonna be easy, a slam dunk, bang, 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 pa! It wasn't like that. As we all know, 20 years later, the consequences of that historical mistake is still haunting America. And undeniable, the prestige of the United States plummeted on the international stage after the failed invasion in Iraq. I'm looking at the situation with the Ukraine and everything. My question is Russia ready, able, and willing to repeat the historical mistake of the United States of America when they invaded Iraq? Because apparently it's the same kind of idea. We go, we don't like what is going on in, different rationale, different rhetoric. It is about security. They have a common border. United States of America and Iraq, they don't have a common border, obviously. They just wanted to go and invade. There is a little bit more complicated with the border and NATO expansion and this and that and Crimea. I mean, NATO should retreat from 97. How about you go out of Crimea and go home there? No? Okay. Thank you very much. It is about Russian security. We understand Russia needs to be secure, safe and secure. As a country, Russian families should feel safe and secure in their cities, in their homes. I should be safe and secure in my city, on my streets, in my home. Are we? It seems to me that is the same idea. We enter, we have a shock and awe kind of army. We can bomb, exactly like we saw the bombing of Baghdad. We can bomb from the air. We can bomb strategic facilities of the Ukrainians. And then full-scale invasion, blitzkrieg march to Kiev, change the government, put a pro-Russian government, everything. Then we go home or we continue the occupation. We go to the Black Sea, the Danube, this and that. There are many scenarios. It's going to be great. Are you fucking crazy? It's going to be a disaster. What is China thinking about that? China think, oh, no limit. We love you, Vladimir Putin. We are friends. No limit. A helping hand from China. When I asked from China a helping hand for a short Romanian guy to renovate his house at Shoimar at Falcon Village, there was no fucking helping hand. It's about polite. Everything it's about polite. Where is the politeness when you need it? When is the respect for the little guy? Where is the truth in all the speeches that I'm hearing over and over and over, year after year after year? Where is the delivering of the speeches that I can hear? At a certain point, the speeches are deflated of the meaning, at least from when I'm standing. If they deliver for other people, I'm very happy for them. I'm not ironic. I'm very happy for them. It seems to me that it's a huge, instead of working to establish peace and security, it's a huge emphasis, a huge effort to be each other parade. Oh, we have the Olympics. Okay, let's fuck up the Olympics. Let's change the conversation. Let's talk about doping. Let's talk about Uyghurs. Let's talk about human rights. Let's talk about sex scandals. Let's talk about anything else except the Olympics. And you know what? I'm very angry because you are successful. Instead of every day waking up, having my coffee, watch the beautiful Olympics, I watch the news, and the news are the one that I'm talking about today. You're very successful about it. To create controversy, to put immense kind of pressure on a 15-year-old skater. All the screens are full of this controversy. To put this kind of situation against the other kind of situation of the other athletes that they say, how about us? I mean, is doping okay? What is the message of this? No, doping is not okay. For the Russian, for the Chinese, for the Americans, for anybody else. I talked about that in my first Do Not Disturb the Circle speech before the Olympics. Yet, when it comes to diplomacy, when it comes to peace and stability, when it comes to building the nation, when it comes to building infrastructure, when it comes to, apparently, there are no limits, should be some limits of the friendship between China and Russia. For two main reasons. One, as I talked about that, I'm going to repeat it. At the United Nations, there are 5 members, nuclear powers with veto power. The big 5: USA, China, Russia, UK, France, and another 15 of them. Obviously, member of the European Union and other countries. But I'm talking USA, China, Russia. Instead of working together, because it's their job, China including, it's the job of China, according to the United Nations, being member of this highest forum on the planet, is to prevent conflict. Do you want me to go to that page when I have my notes and read exactly the mission of the United Nations Council where China is a member with a veto power? The mission was to prevent conflict and to assure peace and stability. Simple English. I have to ask the question, do you understand the words are coming out of my mouth? There is no need for that because the English is unequivocal. It's simple English, even a used car salesman can read and understand. To prevent conflicts, China, mission and the United Nations, a member with veto power, is to prevent conflicts. I understand friendship. I like friendship. I'm not an opponent of anybody. Anybody. I'm not a dissident. I'm not an opponent of China. I'm not an opponent of the United States of America. I am not an opponent of Russia or President Vladimir Putin. Absolutely not. However, this is what is his the mission to prevent conflict, to maintain peace and stability. That's why it is called the United Nations Security Council. Security Council, not distract and invade kind of council. It's not the United Nations, let's fight each other kind of council because China and Russia line up, great friendship, no limit, we love you, Ceausescu and Brezhnev. And let's fuck up the others, USA, UK, and France, basically, and the rest of the European Union. Germany is in a difficult situation. They have to navigate delicate waters, tread carefully, because they need the Russian gas. And instead of no limits, is this no limits a carte blanche for an invasion? This seems to me that China obviously is not fulfilling her mission at the United Nations Security Council, a member with a veto. Veto means we do not agree with that. Veto means we do not agree with an invasion. There is room. Civilized, intelligent people can solve their conflicts through diplomacy. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. I wrote here in the book. It's not a historical book. It's a fun book. It's a fun book with friends, drinking beer, coming together. It's love. It's renovating a house. It's like the Hollywood movie, A Good Year. It's not a historical, but history is the background of my life. You know, I wrote here about a historical moment in 1968. Of course, it was first the invasion of Hungary in 1956, but in 56 we have Russian soldiers. The Russian army was in Romania, so you cannot say no to the guys that they already have the Russian army in Romania, and the communist prisons in Romania were full by the hundreds of thousands of prisoners, political prisoners, that they were still waiting for the Americans to come. 1956, when they enter in Hungary. The Russians enter in Hungary and they crushed the liberalization, the revolt. Yet in 1968, we didn't have Russian military anymore. And Ceausescu said, no, we are not going. It's a well-known story. We are not going against our brothers and sisters in Prague. Huge historical moment. Supported by millions of Romanians, and Western leaders flew here, and it was a moment of dignity, a moment of truth. It was a great risk because We feel for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine because in 1968 we have a huge border with the USSR, and it's exactly like today the Russians were at our borders and they already invaded Hungary, Budapest, and Prague. So the same like today, they already enter in Georgia. In 92, they have exactly like in Donbass, the CNN and the other, they don't talk about the situation with Moldavia, Transnistria. Same idea like in Donbass. They don't fight each other, they don't kill each other, but it's the same pattern. Having an area disputed, and that is how you create problems and control the foreign policy of that country. It's exactly what's happening in Ukraine. I talked here in 1968, we've been exactly like Ukraine it is, we means Romania. I was 2 years old. But my mother, a history teacher, she was absolutely mature person. She was very scared that a war was imminent. What prevented Russia at that moment, not Russia, the former USSR and other countries of the Warsaw Pact that didn't have the dignity and the guts and the courage to stand off to the big brother in the East. And they went wrong. They went against the brother and sister in Prague. With their tanks, with their soldiers, they enabled the invaders. No limits for the friendship between Russia and China. Should be some limits. I wrote here in this novel, I already read it, I'm not gonna find exactly the page and read, but I wrote that two things prevented Romania to be invaded, prevented USSR and Russia to invade at that moment. First and foremost was the obvious determination of the Romanian army and the Romanian nation to defend every square centimeters of this country at any price. That was seen on TV, it was unequivocal. And the second, weighing a lot, huge, massive kind of input, was the fact that our friends, the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party at the time, the highest level, the leader, mentioned to Russia that they would not approve, would not agree with an invasion of Romania. And Russia did not, I don't know all the diplomatic talks. I haven't seen the archives and the diplomatic would have been a very interesting historical study and diplomatic kind of study of that incredible moment, incredibly important moment in Romanian history yet. What is important today? And what was important then, when I was 2 years old, is that the Russia, the former USSR, did not invade Romania. Today, coming to present, I think that China has a massive, important input in this entire situation and is not in interest in China just to destabilize Ukraine and the West, as we are all connected together. That kind of destabilization, I think it will affect China too. I think the Chinese prestige will be affected, as China, as I said, is member of the United Nations Security Council with a veto power, and it will look on the international stage as China approved of the invasion, which is obviously not how the Chinese leaders want to be perceived in the world. They are the one with respect for the little guy, with a win-win kind of philosophy, with a let's build bridges and the roads and infrastructure, let's do business, not war, which I think is the right kind of approach. I thought the same thing with my little head, the monkey, Woo! However, not with my little head. However, I saw that actually, according to what I saw on TV, Mr. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, never shut the door for diplomacy. He was all the time open for diplomacy. This is very important. Let's write it here. Number one, Mr. President Putin is in favor of diplomacy. As Mr. Lavrov, a person with huge life experience and diplomatic experience, and obviously is not an up and coming kind of guy in politics, international politics, they advise each other. They thought about it and they said that diplomacy should be increased. I think it's a very inspiring moment. Gives me a little hope if action will follow. Diplomacy, hope. I wrote here. Okay. China is the country about building roads and bridges, nations, BRI, right? The main important projects of our time. Belt and Road Initiative. Okay? If a war erupted there, if Afghanistan is destabilized, if there is Kazakhstan is destabilized, in a country devastated by war like Iraq or Libya, another example, or Syria, you don't have the time to build infrastructure and to build a nation and to make business. So I'm sure that China has, as a world power, world leader, of course, member of the United Nations, has an important input in all the situation. I understand that China is watching closely how NATO will react to this crisis because they have the interest with Taiwan. Taiwan is not a threat to China. Taiwan is not going to invade China. And as somebody smarter than me said, China doesn't need to use force in relationship with Taiwan. I'm not going to go in history of Taiwan. But it is obvious as a massive important power as China, they don't need to use force there. Why use force here? Why not leave diplomacy work? And there is the United States of America, NATO, and most important, Ukraine, an independent nation. I think for all of these that they are involved, a diplomatic solution will be preferable for all of them. It's going to be win, 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 and more win. Instead of an invasion that will be obviously costly, body bags, destruction, human suffering, families destroyed, businesses destroyed, infrastructure destroyed, prestige lost, prestige lost from Russia, prestige lost from China, prestige lost from NATO, and obviously Ukraine in the middle. That Ukraine was a battleground to wash their underwear there, as I showed and played so many times, which shouldn't be like that. Instead of this, there is a possibility of a peaceful resolution, of diplomacy, and then, instead of sanctions that are going to cripple Ukrainian economy for sure in case of an invasion, Russian economy for sure, Russian interest, all those fucking oligarchs, that they buy here, buy there, that yacht, that plane, that building, that football team, that their assets might be frozen. I don't know how the international financial world, but definitely it's not going to be a good situation for them. And there is no doubt that the ripple effect of an invasion will have huge effect in energy prices, that will reflect in all the other costs, and our lives would be disrupted. Our well-being of many people, probably in China too. China doesn't need a situation with ripple effects that will affect her economy, even that is so big. So instead of all of these negative things, everybody can take a step back, like intelligent, smart people can sit on the table, work the deal, like they teach us at the used car salesman school of selling and working the deal with the client, and then let the business flow. You put billions in pipes, there is beautiful infrastructure developing the Arctic and all over the place. There are pipes between Russia and China, there is business going on. I saw Mr. Erdogan in the Emirates signing deals there about economy, pragmatic. I saw Israel in Dubai signing deals, economy. Very good. I give one example of so many that I saw yesterday, a documentary about um, a cable. A cable being laid out in the Arctic that will improve the life in terms of internet and communication for 2 million people there. These are the actions that should have no limit. This is the beautiful friendship that we are talking about. If you lay a cable and you improve the life of 2 billion people, that's an excellent thing to do. If you invade a country, go to Kiev or whatever you do, it is, in my opinion, AAA. Another historical mistake as it was the invasion of Iraq. That's all I have to say about this.